This is in theory.
Can Republicans be a majority?
Today's topic is about Republicans and whether this party is able to be a majority party, whether they have some structural deficiency in being a majority party. We're going to look at the popular election for president and the popular election for House. We're just talking whether 50% of the country will approve Republicans going into the House. Every single House member runs every 2 years. So they're all running every presidential year. You have a presidential election and a national election for the House. We're doing this from 1980 to now, the post-Reagan years. Reagan comes in, he gets a majority. 50% of the country, popular vote for him. At the same time, only 48.6% of the country votes for a Republican House. Now, these are only presidential elections. I'm not doing the midterms. Why am I doing that? Because half the people vote in the midterms. These midterms elections have a very small, much smaller percentage of people voting. These are just the big elections. And we see 58% of the country votes for Reagan, but only 47.35 votes for a Republican House. You may not understand what I'm doing here. Let me just give you this very quickly. If a party, any party, gets a majority here, but doesn't get a majority here, we're going to call that a split result. Why is it a split result? Well, it's a split result because there are partisan elections all across the country for the House, and it is strange for someone to say, I want Reagan, but I don't want the Republicans in the House. Why would they say that? Well, we told you why. Split ticket voting, candidate-centered politics. They like Reagan, but they don't like what? Republicans? That's a very interesting phenomenon. 47% of the country in 1984 likes Republicans in the House, while much more wanted Reagan back in there. You could say that one interpretation here is Americans like divided government. That's fine. That's fine, but that supports my point. And my point is what? Is there a problem for Republicans going beyond divided government and getting to have a party regime? And so far, we have two split decisions. Split decisions. Let's keep going.
You are listening to In Theory.
Now we go here to George Bush, who gets 53%. They get a majority. But another split decision. Look here, 46.1. You'll notice at this time period, Democrats are getting a majority in the national election for the House. Now let's continue forward. 1992, Ross Perot was running here, so these values are messed up. Again, Democrats consistently having 50% in the House. Let's continue forward. Ross Perot was running. He took 8% of the vote this year, so Democrats did not get their majority. Look at here, getting very close. Don't get confused by this. If we round, it's a tie. This is a statistical tie. Don't get confused by you see a 5 here. 50.03, 49.97. If you round here, this is very close to being a majority. Here we have Bush getting only 47.9%. And wow, for the first time in 2000, majority of the country wanted Republicans in the House, but they couldn't get a majority here. So again, that's a split decision. What happens here? George Bush runs in 2004, gets a majority of the country and a majority in the House. This is the first time we have seen Republicans in a national election. We're taking two pulses here. One is for the president and the other is for what? The president's party. So you have the pulse for the president and the pulse for the party. And this is the first time that we see Republicans actually being a majority party.
You are listening to In Theory.
Now let's continue forward. Barack Obama comes in. This is the Great Recession. Republicans are in big trouble again. 44.5. And we go again here. Republicans starting to come back. 49.4 is a pretty decent number, but not a majority. And here we have Trump doing very, very poorly. If you look at these numbers, one of the things that Trump did was increase the vote totals for libertarians. There's a little bit of a boost for libertarians because people disliked him personally, but still were conservative, still thought of themselves as conservative. And so if you add the Libertarian and the Green Party in, give this total the Greens, and give this total the Libertarians, this presidential race does get slightly more competitive in terms of left and right. Now, what do we have here? Look at that. 2016, a majority of the country wanted the Republican Party in the House. Popular vote. It's not gerrymandering or anything like that. Popular vote. So this is a split decision. I hope you understand why it's split. This didn't get to 50. This one did. Biden, 51. Republicans back down to 48. One of the things you should note is Democratic Party clearly is a majority. Democratic Party clearly is a majority. Democratic Party clearly is a majority. That's a 3-time winner very recently. So the summary. Democrats have 3 times where they were clear majority party and 2 times where they split. In other words, they got majority in the House, but not otherwise. Republicans have only 1 time where they had majority, but they had a lot of splits. 5 splits were in there. So tell me, does the GOP have trouble being a majority party? Answer the question for me. How would you diagnose it?
You are listening to In Theory.
This would be the argument. 5 + 1 = 6. 3 + 2 = 5. In other words, even though Republicans aren't winning very much, they got a lot of singles, they got a lot of splits. Let's say in baseball, this is a home run. And what's this one going to be? Let's say it's a single. I'm not a baseball fan, but their on-base percentage is pretty interesting. So you can look at that. The analogy of home runs to singles is probably pretty good because the president is a home run, the House is just a single. It's actually a very decent analogy. I suppose you'd rather have this team. This team's a better team. 3 home runs and 2 singles versus 1 home run and 5 singles. I think this team's going to score more.
You are listening to In Theory.
And what I want to do now is look at down-party domination. In the United States, there are 3 chances for the nation-state to express a national political preference in voting. You have a national popular election for president. You also have a national popular election for the House of Representatives. At the same time, when that occurs, you also have a national popular election for state legislatures in the lower house. All of the state legislators are running. It is telling us something about politics. Once you concede it's a little bit of a red state, what are you saying? Well, it tends to have those beliefs. This is the current composition of all of the state legislators. There are 7,383 legislative seats throughout the states, House members and Senate members. As of today, right now, Republicans have 54% of all of the legislative seats, Democrats 45. I want to look only at the lower chamber of all of the state houses. Every state has a lower chamber except for one. These seats, obviously they're based on population, and they all run during the presidential election. Now, the seats are gerrymandered, and I don't have popular vote totals. I only have seat totals, but nonetheless, let's look at it. You've got 5,000 of these lower house seats in the states. Republicans have 53.8 of them. That's probably the best statistic I can get since I don't have popular votes.
You are listening to In Theory.
The national popular vote that we just had in the most recent election was 51.62 for Biden once you throw in the Green Party. I threw in the left-wing third parties. Republicans had 48.13 once you throw in the Libertarians. This is the national House vote. Take a look here, how similar this is and how similar this is. Now, this is the national state house. I don't have the vote, I only have the seats. We seem to be in the state houses have a bit of a different result here. These are the seats, not the votes. I hope I'm stressing that. Whether Republicans are a majority party, can be a majority party, is complicated because they seem to do well down ballot. They have down ballot strength now that they never had. In the days of Reagan, they couldn't get any down ballot strength. And in the days of Reagan, they couldn't get anyone to vote for them in the House. And so I think this is a complicated question of whether they can be a majority party. I don't think it's simple. And here's something else I'm going to tell you that I haven't told you yet. I'm setting up another lecture. Conservative populism was good for the down ballot and bad for the up ballot. The reason why Trump can't get a majority of people to like him isn't only because he's Trump, but because the conservative populism will never be a national majority, but it is working down ballot. That's what I'm going to argue to you later on. That lecture's coming. Okay, so you'll notice in the Democratic Party, it's been the opposite. The Democratic Party faced its version of populism, Bernie Sanders, and it keeps defeating it. and gets a majority at the top because it's not too leftist. So Democrats have done the absolute opposite. They've pushed down their populist movement and are winning up at the top but not down at the bottom. They have an inverted relationship. Whereas the Republicans have embraced this thorny version of conservatism and they're winning down ballot but not up top. That's what the argument is. And I'm going to present that thesis to you in a later lecture. I've ruined it. I've given out I've ruined one of my tricks I was going to bring out and show you.